What happens when an undercover CEO uncovers betrayal within her own luxury bridal boutique? Hello, amazing viewers. Today, we're diving into the captivating story of Camille Laurent, the brilliant owner of Elysian Bridal Couture. When whispers of exploitation and favoritism reached her ears, Camille decided to go undercover to reveal the truth. What she discovered was a shocking culture of manipulation and injustice, led by her own boutique manager. But instead of turning away, Camille took bold steps to rebuild her business on ethics, creativity, and genuine artistry. Stay tuned to see how Camille transformed betrayal into a triumph of compassion and innovation. Elysian Bridal Couture was a name synonymous with elegance, artistry, and inclusivity. Nestled in the heart of Paris, the prestigious boutique had built its reputation on creating timeless, breathtaking bridal gowns that graced catwalks, celebrity weddings, and intimate ceremonies alike. But for Camille Laurent, Elysian Bridal Couture was more than just a celebrated name. It was her mother's legacy. Renée Laurent had founded the boutique 30 years earlier, her designs renowned not only for their intricate beauty but for the warmth and respect with which every bride, regardless of background or budget, was treated. From the lavish ballrooms of the French aristocracy to humble chapels tucked away in rural villages, Renée's gowns had touched countless lives. When Renée passed away, Camille took over the business, determined to preserve her mother's vision of inclusivity and creativity. Under her guidance, the boutique expanded its reach, attracting clients from all walks of life. Camille maintained her mother's open-door policy where aspiring designers and seamstresses were welcomed with mentorship and support. However, whispers of discontent had begun to circulate. Camille received complaints from junior seamstresses about a hostile work environment and from clients who felt dismissed or outright ignored. The complaints seemed to share a common thread. Charlotte Dubois, the senior designer Camille had promoted for her impeccable skill and dedication to the craft. Charlotte's designs were undeniably beautiful, but her attitude toward anyone she deemed beneath her standards was abrasive at best, cruel at worst. Reports of Charlotte's favoritism toward wealthy clients, combined with her disdain for those with modest budgets, deeply troubled Camille. She had built Elysian Bridal Couture on her mother's principles of compassion and artistry, principles she refused to see eroded by arrogance and elitism. Determined to understand the truth of what was happening within her own business, Camille made a bold decision. If Charlotte's behavior truly threatened the boutique's integrity, Camille needed to see it for herself. And so she devised a plan to go undercover. By abandoning her polished, sophisticated appearance and posing as a low-ranking seamstress named Sophie Martin, Camille hoped to gain insight into the interactions and dynamics Charlotte had carefully hidden from her. It was a risky move, but Camille's resolve was unwavering. She could not allow her mother's legacy to be tainted by exploitation and cruelty. With her disguise prepared and her mind set on uncovering the truth, Camille prepared to step away from her role as CEO and immerse herself in the daily operations of Elysian Bridal Couture as a humble seamstress. Camille transformed herself into Sophie Martin, a meek and unassuming woman with little experience in the high-fashion world. Gone were the tailored blouses, elegant jewelry, and graceful demeanor that marked her as the accomplished CEO of Elysian Bridal Couture. Instead, she donned simple, worn-out dresses, her hair tied back in a messy bun, her nails bare and roughened by hours of sewing practice. She adopted a softer voice, her usual confidence tempered with a hint of uncertainty. To complete her disguise, Camille crafted a resume that highlighted only minimal experience, enough to qualify her for an entry-level position, but not enough to draw suspicion. With her cover identity prepared, Camille presented herself at the boutique as an aspiring seamstress, desperate for an opportunity to learn. The receptionist barely glanced at her resume before directing her to Charlotte Dubois, who assessed her with a scrutinizing, dismissive glare. "We don't have time to train amateurs," Charlotte remarked curtly, her eyes flickering over Camille's plain attire with undisguised disdain. "But if you can stitch a straight line and keep your mouth shut, maybe you'll be useful." Camille bit back her retort, nodding meekly as she accepted the position Charlotte begrudgingly offered. Assigned to the workroom in the back of the boutique, Camille quickly became familiar with the grueling demands Charlotte placed on the seamstresses. Days stretched into long hours of sewing, hemming, and adjusting gowns under the watchful eyes of Charlotte's favorites, designers who mimicked her condescending attitude toward the newer staff. Camille kept her head down, her hands busy, her eyes and ears keen. As Sophie, she worked tirelessly, taking note of every slight, every unfair reprimand, and every dismissal of those who dared to voice concerns. It became apparent that Charlotte wielded her authority with ruthless precision, reserving her praise only for those who catered to her elitist preferences. Camille's decision to go undercover was already proving fruitful, but the depths of Charlotte's harshness remained to be fully revealed. Camille pressed forward, determined to uncover the truth and restore the compassion and creativity her mother had built Elysian bridal couture upon. Camille's days in the workroom were spent hunched over bridal gowns, stitching hems and embellishing intricate patterns with painstaking precision. Though the work was demanding, it was the atmosphere of intimidation and favoritism that weighed most heavily on her. The other seamstresses worked with mechanical efficiency, their faces drawn and eyes lowered to avoid Charlotte's scathing remarks. But amid the oppressive environment, one figure stood out like a beacon of resilience and grace. Madeleine Roche, a seasoned seamstress whose skills and dedication to her craft were unmistakable. Madeleine was in her mid-40s, with graying hair tucked neatly beneath a headscarf and hands that bore the calluses of years spent perfecting her art. Unlike many of the others, she moved with quiet confidence, her gaze steady even when Charlotte's criticisms lashed through the workroom. Camille noticed that Madeleine often stayed late, her fingers deftly mending lace and satin with a delicacy that spoke of both experience and genuine love for her work. Camille admired her from afar at first, unsure whether Madeleine would regard her as another outsider to be shunned or a potential ally in a place where loyalty was bought with approval. Their first conversation came when Camille struggled with a particularly delicate lace overlay, her hands trembling from fatigue and the pressure to meet unrealistic deadlines. As she muttered under her breath, trying to coax the fabric into submission, a gentle voice broke the silence. "Here, let me help you with that." Camille looked up to see Madeleine standing beside her, a warm but weary smile on her face. Without waiting for permission, Madeleine guided Camille's hands, demonstrating a more efficient stitching technique that preserved the lace's fragile beauty. "Thank you," Camille whispered, her own voice faltering with genuine gratitude. "I'm still learning. It's harder than I thought." Madeleine chuckled softly. "We've all been there, but I can tell you've got the passion for it. Don't let them make you think you're not good enough." Camille was taken aback by Madeleine's kindness. It was rare in a place where support seemed scarce and competition was encouraged. As the days passed, Madeleine continued to offer advice and encouragement, often sharing tips and techniques that went beyond the rigid, unimaginative methods Charlotte enforced. Through their brief but meaningful interactions, Camille discovered that Madeleine had been with Elysian Bridal Couture for nearly 15 years. She had been hired during her mother's era, when creativity and collaboration were celebrated. Madeleine spoke fondly of the late founder, her voice tinged with nostalgia and sorrow. "She built this place on kindness and excellence. You could feel her passion in every design. It's not the same now, not with Charlotte in charge." Camille's chest tightened at the mention of her mother's legacy. It was clear that Madeleine had remained loyal to the original vision, even as the boutique's atmosphere grew toxic under Charlotte's rule. Gradually, Camille and Madeleine formed a quiet alliance. Madeleine's guidance helped Camille hone her skills, and Camille's presence seemed to rekindle a spark of hope in the older woman. As their bond deepened, Camille realized that Madeleine might be the key to uncovering the full extent of Charlotte's manipulative grip on the boutique. More importantly, Madeleine represented the heart of Elysian Bridal Couture, the essence of compassion and artistry that Camille so desperately wanted to restore. As Camille continued her work at Elysian Bridal Couture, her eyes grew accustomed to the rhythm of the workroom. The constant hum of sewing machines, the muffled complaints of aching backs and pricked fingers, and the wary glances exchanged whenever Charlotte entered the room. But it was the murmurs and whispered grievances during hurried lunch breaks or late-night sessions that truly revealed the extent of the exploitation. Camille made a habit of listening quietly, piecing together the fragments of discontent that her fellow seamstresses were too afraid to voice openly. Madeleine became her most valuable confidant, providing Camille with insight into the insidious practices that had taken root under Charlotte's leadership. Overtime without pay had become an unspoken rule, deadlines were tightened with little regard for the well-being of the seamstresses, and the pressure to meet Charlotte's impossible standards left many of them feeling both exhausted and undervalued. Camille learned that Charlotte routinely threatened termination as a way to force compliance, ensuring that the workers were too fearful of losing their livelihoods to speak up. Contracts were rewritten or altered without warning, and bonuses were promised but rarely delivered. But worse than the exploitation of their labor was the manipulation of their creative potential. Madeline explained how Charlotte routinely dismissed the seamstresses' ideas and contributions, enforcing a rigid adherence to her own outdated designs. "She calls it preserving tradition," Madeline said bitterly, her fingers working furiously over a frayed hem. "But all she's preserving is her control." Many of the seamstresses were talented designers in their own right, yet their suggestions were ignored or outright scorned by Charlotte, who seemed threatened by any innovation that didn't come from her own sketchbook. Camille also noticed how Charlotte played favorites, granting privileges to those who flattered her ego and publicly discrediting those who dared to disagree. Promotions were dangled like bait, but only ever awarded to the most subservient. Madeline herself had been passed over for advancement countless times, despite her seniority and undeniable skill. It infuriated Camille to see such talent and dedication go unrecognized, and she couldn't help but draw parallels to her own struggles for validation within her family. One night, as the workroom emptied and the air grew thick with fatigue, Madeline confided in Camille about Charlotte's latest scheme. "She's been slashing our wages, claiming that profits are down, but that's a lie. I've seen the books. The clients are paying more than ever, but somehow we're earning less." Camille's blood ran cold. The betrayal was deeper than she had imagined. Charlotte was not only exploiting her workers' time and creativity, she was actively stealing from them. Driven by a newfound sense of purpose, Camille began documenting everything she learned. She noted the discrepancies between promised payments and actual wages, the casual cruelty with which Charlotte dismissed the workers' concerns, and the way innovation was punished rather than encouraged. The more she uncovered, the more determined she became to expose the truth. But Camille knew she needed undeniable proof, something that would force Charlotte to face accountability for her action. For that, she needed Madeline's help. The moment of confrontation came sooner than Camille had anticipated. Armed with a meticulously compiled dossier of evidence, Camille approached Madeline with her findings. Together they pored over the ledger entries Madeline had secretly copied, cross-referencing them against pay stubs and client invoices. The discrepancies were staggering. Not only had Charlotte been pocketing a substantial portion of the seamstress's wages, but she had also been funneling funds into her own personal accounts under the guise of business expenses. It was theft, pure and simple. Camille's anger simmered just beneath her calm exterior, her resolve solidified by the betrayal she had witnessed. The plan was simple. Camille would present her findings to Charlotte during a scheduled design meeting, an event where Charlotte traditionally paraded her authority before her employees. The timing was perfect, with several of the senior seamstresses, including Madeline, in attendance. As Camille stepped into the meeting room, her gaze swept over the tense faces around her. Madeline offered her a subtle nod of encouragement, her eyes gleaming with hope and apprehension. Camille clutched the folder of evidence tightly, her heart thudding in her chest. Charlotte entered the room with her usual air of superiority, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. Without preamble, she launched into a critique of the latest designs, her words laced with contempt for anything that deviated from her outdated aesthetic. But Camille refused to be intimidated. She waited until Charlotte paused for breath, then spoke up with a clarity that cut through the room's stifling atmosphere. "Before we continue, there's something I need to address," Camille said, her voice steady. "It concerns the well-being of your employees and the integrity of this company." Charlotte's eyes narrowed, annoyance flashing across her face. "This isn't the time for complaints, Camille. We're here to discuss design, not grievances." "This is about more than grievances," Camille replied, her tone unyielding. She opened the folder and began laying out the documents on the table. "I've spent weeks gathering evidence of financial misconduct and unethical treatment of your employees. Underpaid wages, stolen bonuses, falsified records. You've been exploiting the very people who make your business successful." The room fell deathly silent. The other seamstresses exchanged bewildered, fearful glances, while Madeline's expression remained one of fierce support. Charlotte's expression shifted from irritation to disbelief, then to fury. "How dare you accuse me of such things?" she spat. "You think you can walk in here and dictate how I run my company?" Camille met her gaze head-on. "No, but I can ensure that your actions are brought to light. I've compiled everything, proof of your manipulation and theft, and if you continue to dismiss your workers' rights, I will take this to the authorities." Charlotte's face was drained of color. The power she had wielded so effortlessly was crumbling before her eyes. Camille pressed on, her voice sharp and unrelenting. "You've built Elysian Bridal Couture on the talent and dedication of these seamstresses. Without them, your reputation means nothing. It's time you acknowledged that." For a moment, Charlotte stood frozen, her eyes darting between Camille and the documents scattered across the table. It was as if she were grappling with the reality of her crumbling empire. But Camille's courage had already set something in motion that could not be undone. The truth had been laid bare, and there was no turning back. With Charlotte's unethical practices exposed, Camille wasted no time implementing sweeping reforms to restore fairness and integrity within Elysian Bridal Couture. As Charlotte stormed out of the office in disgrace, Camille turned her attention to the employees whose livelihoods had been exploited. She gathered everyone in the studio for a meeting, her voice steady and filled with conviction as she addressed them. Camille apologized for not discovering the injustice sooner and vowed to make things right. She announced the immediate dismissal of Charlotte from her managerial position, reassuring the workers that their voices would now be heard and respected. Madeline, who had proven herself as a compassionate and skilled leader, was promoted to the role of head seamstress, a position that recognized her talent and dedication. Camille implemented an open-door policy, encouraging employees to voice their concerns and suggestions without fear of retaliation. To further ensure accountability, Camille partnered with an external auditing firm to review payroll practices and institute transparent procedures for tracking hours and wages. Pay discrepancies were corrected, with employees receiving back pay for the hours and bonuses Charlotte had stolen from them. But Camille didn't stop there. She also established a mentorship program to nurture the creativity of her team, encouraging seamstresses to contribute their own designs to future collections. The atmosphere of the studio began to transform as the workers, once burdened by fear and exploitation, embraced their newfound freedom and creative autonomy. Camille's leadership wasn't just about rectifying past wrongs. It was about building a future where everyone's contributions were valued and celebrated. The road to recovery was far from complete, but the first steps had been taken. Camille knew that her dedication to fostering a compassionate and inclusive work environment would be the true legacy of Elysian Bridal Couture. After dismantling the toxic management structure Charlotte had imposed, Camille made it her personal mission to ensure Madeline's talent and leadership were nurtured, not suppressed. Recognizing Madeline's dedication and creativity, Camille scheduled a private meeting with her in the newly revamped design studio. Camille's tone was warm and encouraging as she invited Madeline to share her visions for the brand. Madeline, still adjusting to her newfound authority, hesitated at first but eventually opened up about her passion for innovative, eco-friendly bridal designs. Her ideas ranged from repurposing vintage fabrics to creating modern silhouettes that combined elegance with sustainability. Camille was impressed not only by Madeline's creativity, but also by her ethical approach to fashion, a philosophy that aligned perfectly with Camille's vision for Elysian Bridal Couture. Determined to support Madeline's growth, Camille granted her the creative freedom to develop her own collection under the company's name. She provided Madeline with resources, mentorship, and the authority to assemble a team of seamstresses who shared her passion for sustainable design. Camille also encouraged her to showcase her work at an upcoming bridal expo, offering her full support and guidance throughout the process. For the first time, Madeline felt empowered, her ideas celebrated rather than stifled. Under Camille's guidance, Madeline thrived. Her collection, inspired by timeless beauty and environmental consciousness, quickly became a highlight of Elysian Bridal Couture's portfolio. Customers praised the innovative designs and the brand's commitment to ethical craftsmanship. Madeline's transformation from a disillusioned seamstress to a respected leader not only boosted her confidence, but also inspired her colleagues. Camille's investment in Madeline's talent proved that true leadership wasn't about exerting control, but about fostering potential. The success of Madeline's collection marked the beginning of a new era for Elysian bridal couture, one built on creativity, inclusivity, and integrity. With Charlotte removed from her managerial position and Madeline thriving under newfound creative freedom, Camille turned her attention to restoring Elysian bridal couture's reputation and integrity. She began by implementing structural changes to ensure fairness, creativity, and respect flourished throughout the boutique. Camille personally held meetings with every seamstress, designer, and sales associate, inviting them to share their experiences, grievances, and ideas without fear of retribution. The open dialogue revealed deeper issues Charlotte had buried: underpaid workers, neglected feedback, and outdated policies that stifled innovation. Camille addressed each concern systematically, starting with pay adjustments to ensure all employees were fairly compensated for their skills and dedication. She revamped the workplace environment, investing in updated equipment, comfortable workspaces, and flexible schedules that prioritized employee well-being. Recognizing that creativity thrived under collaboration, Camille introduced weekly design workshops where seamstresses and designers could exchange ideas, learn new techniques, and support each other's growth. The boutique's culture began to transform from one of fear and control to one of inspiration and inclusivity. Clients noticed the change too. The atmosphere of the showroom was now welcoming, vibrant, and elegant, reflecting the creativity and passion of its staff. Customer satisfaction soared, with brides praising not only the quality of their gowns but also the genuine warmth of the service. Camille also launched a marketing campaign to showcase Elysian bridal couture's revitalized approach. Highlighting Madeline's innovative, eco-friendly collection, the campaign emphasized the boutique's commitment to authenticity, quality, and ethics. The positive press garnered attention from prominent bridal publications and influencers, breathing new life into the brand. Camille's dedication to rebuilding the boutique had paid off. Elysian Bridal Couture was no longer just a name. It was a testament to resilience, creativity, and compassion. Months after Camille's intervention, Elysian Bridal Couture had undergone a complete transformation, evolving from a place of exploitation and fear to a flourishing hub of creativity and integrity. Under Madeline Roche's leadership as the new head designer, the boutique's innovative and eco-friendly bridal collection became a sensation, drawing praise from both clients and fashion critics alike. Brides from all over the city flocked to the showroom, captivated not only by the elegance of the gowns but also by the welcoming, supportive atmosphere Camille had worked so hard to cultivate. The boutique's renewed success was reflected not only in its growing clientele but also in the morale of its employees. Seamstresses and designers, once silenced and undervalued, now collaborated freely, their talents encouraged and their contributions respected. Madeline, having regained her confidence, thrived in her role, mentoring younger designers and introducing fresh concepts that further elevated the boutique's reputation. Camille maintained a close relationship with her staff, frequently visiting the showroom to listen, encourage, and celebrate their achievements. Her dedication to fostering a culture of transparency and empathy had cemented Elysian Bridal Couture's position as a premier destination for brides seeking not only beautiful gowns, but also a truly personal and fulfilling experience. Camille's undercover journey had taught her invaluable lessons about leadership, trust, and the importance of recognizing the contributions of those working tirelessly behind the scenes. More than just saving her boutique, she had reclaimed its soul. The name Elysian Bridal Couture had become synonymous with excellence, compassion, and creativity, values Camille now championed with pride. As she looked out over the bustling showroom, her heart swelled with satisfaction, knowing she had not only restored her business but had also created a haven where talent and integrity could truly shine. The story of Camille Laurent's undercover journey to restore Elysian Bridal Couture offers powerful lessons about leadership, empathy, and accountability. By shedding her position of privilege and immersing herself among her employees, Camille discovered that true leadership requires understanding and addressing the struggles faced by those on the front lines. She learned that negligence and exploitation can flourish when leaders remain disconnected from the day-to-day realities of their businesses. Camille's experience demonstrated the importance of transparency and the necessity of valuing each employee's contributions. Her decision to empower Madeleine Roche and other staff members proved that innovation and creativity thrive in an environment built on trust and respect. Camille's efforts not only repaired the boutique's fractured culture, but also established a lasting foundation of integrity and collaboration. Ultimately, the story teaches us that real success is not measured by profit alone, but by the well-being of the people who make that success possible. Leaders who genuinely care, listen, and act on the concerns of their employees can transform toxic environments into thriving, compassionate spaces where creativity and excellence can flourish. Camille's journey serves as a reminder that leadership rooted in empathy and accountability can overcome even the most entrenched injustices.